All right, we are here at Stapp Interstate Toyota, pretty nice dealership. But today we're going to talk about which trucks I would buy, which I would not buy. I might actually go through all of Toyota because I own other Toyotas here and I know enough about them. I'm a huge Toyota fan. I know a lot of people don't think I am, but hey, I'm going to go through. You might be surprised. I'm not going to put the axe down on the Tundra just yet. So let's go through and I'm going to tell you what I think. So a couple things here about the Tundra. Actually, I love the mud bath color. I don't know why. This is an iForce Max Platinum Tundra. Does look like it has the long bed. A couple things I don't like. I don't like the composite bed in the Tundras. I'm just not a big fan. I'd rather have a steel bed. Some people don't care. So this is coming in at $81,000 for this Tundra hybrid. Now the Tundras, so the powertrains, you only get one powertrain, everybody knows that. It's the 3.4 liter. It has a very colored past. We've got multiple engine recalls on this, but I'm gonna say something that, I came down here thinking, for me, yeah, I wouldn't buy one for myself. I bought a Ram Hurricane instead because of the powertrain issues with these. But I've been monitoring the National Highway Traffic and Safety complaints on these Tundras, and I'll tell you that I've seen less and less and less. And then what put this into perspective for me was the GM 6.2 liter failures. So GM, if you aren't aware, they've had over 500,000 GM 6.2 liters have been recalled, and they make Toyota's problem look like peanuts, look like nothing. Toyota, so far, National Highway Traffic and Safety, there's no complaints for these Tundras for failed engines. Now for the 2025s, you'll see probably about, I think 20 or so complaints with regards to the engine failures. In 2025 and early 25, they had engine failures, and then there was a cutoff point where you started to see fewer and fewer 25s dropping. I'm hopeful. Look, I like the design of this engine. I think it's a great towing engine. I would love to look at them again in the future. I can't now, but it's kind of a maybe. Like if you're willing to roll the dice on Toyota, I'd look at their leases. They have really good lease deals. And if you don't want to have it out of warranty anyway, and it's just going to give you headaches, if you're like, oh man, I don't want to have a Tundra out of warranty because of the spun main bearings and the recall, you could get a lease. The downside is, it's a safety issue if your engine locks up on you. So with GM 6.2 liter and the Tundra, that's one of the reasons I didn't want it, just a safety issue. But I've always liked the looks of the Tundras. Not as much as the Ram that I bought, but I still really like the looks of them. There are some other things to consider with the Tundra. Let's see, this is $77,000 for this Platinum. I'm trying to find a lower trim. You can find lower trims on the Tundras. They don't have a lot here. That's a Rally. They're probably going to come in at about, I'd say $50,000 for an SR5, which is kind of getting up there for me. One thing I don't like that there's, plastic bumpers. My Ram has steel bumpers. Just little things. I didn't really like the location of the intercoolers there. Kind of open. The grill's really open and lets a lot of rocks through. There's a lot of things that I think they could improve on. There's a lot of wind noise, and you'll notice something that I'll show you here. There's a really big rake on that window. So what I mean by rake is, you look at how this comes down and how low this is. So just look at how low that is. It makes it look cool, kind of gives it that's the design element of the Tundra that makes it look neat, but it does kind of reduce your vision in the cab. That's just one thing you'll notice when driving them. Other than that, there's still some quality issues in these, but there are with any vehicle. It's still gonna be a Toyota. You're probably gonna have pretty reliable electronics. I really like the transmission in these. They haven't had a lot of issues with their 10-speed. Overall, Toyota's always been traditionally pretty reliable, but we're gonna move on to the Tacoma. And the Tacoma is actually a different story. They've been selling these like hotcakes. And if you're wondering what these are for hail, because we get a ton of hail in Colorado. And so they just decided, hey, it's a lot cheaper to put these up long-term than it is to pay out insurance. So we're gonna look at this. I don't know why I like the mud bath color, TRD Sport Tacoma. This is coming in at $54,000. So these are gonna be a little bit more, of course, the 2.4 liter 4-cylinder with the 8-speed automatic. The Tacomas did have some problems with the 8-speed early on. It was like the first 6 months or so. They had maybe 1,000 or 2,000 of these. ever since then, they've been really solid with this 8-speed automatic. If you're just comparing this to the previous generation of Tacoma, these are awesome to drive. There's more leg room. There's more height in the truck from the floorboards up to the top. Not as much as other brands like the Frontier, but if you're comparing this to the previous gen Tacoma, I like this a lot better than the previous gen. With regards to reliability, who knows? But these have been kind of a bright spot for Toyota. They've been selling hundreds of thousands of these 2.4s. They've been super reliable. People love the power. Obviously, they're boosted, so you're going to have a lot more torque than you would in a naturally aspirated engine. And people have had pretty good luck with them. The only thing that you see kind of routinely fail in these is right here. This top hat kind of blows out sometimes and hitting big potholes or hard bumps. But that's a super easy fix, cheap fix. Icon makes a fix for that, and Toyota's been warranting them. It's not like a huge problem, it just happens occasionally. Same thing goes for, the 4Runners. It's the same platform. The difference being these are made in Mexico and the 4Runners are gonna be made in Japan. So I would still, if you're looking for a mid-sized truck and you just gotta have Toyota, I would still recommend the Tacoma. I think it's been out long enough and they've been put through, enough misery from people. We're not seeing failures in these in huge numbers like we did the Tundra, and I think it's a pretty safe buy right now. Now let's go to the 4Runner. People have been ripping on the new 4Runner. I actually really like the looks of the new 4Runner. I don't know why. I mean, I like the old one as well, but I do like the new one, and I like the turbocharged platforms because I'm at elevation. Most people are gonna just keep these, barely through warranty anyway. This is $61,000 for this limited. But I like the design elements on the rear that they changed. And one thing that I utilize myself is this rear window rolls down. They got rid of that into the Sequoia, and that really bugged me. So this is actually awesome. I throw a kayak in here or paddle boards or whatever. It's a super useful thing. Or if you got dogs, you can roll this down a little bit, give them some air in there. So I think the design of the 4Runner, I just like it. I would recommend it. It's just the prices are a little high, but they're gonna hold their value. You know that Toyota is gonna hold their value, and that's kind of why people buy something like this. Is I guarantee if they continue to have the reliability that they've had on these 4Runners like they did the old one, they're made in Japan. The materials, they're pretty good. Talked to TRD John about these, and the materials are really pretty top notch. Maybe not as good as they were in like 2018, 2019, but they're better than what he saw in some of the lower trim Tacomas. The iForce Max, they haven't had a ton of issues with that either in these Tacomas, but they are very expensive to fix. So if you're looking for a long-term reliability vehicle, I saw one of these iForce Max drop out, and I think it was like over $20,000 to fix the hybrid system along with the transmission. So if you're looking for something like 200, 300,000 mile long-term reliability, I would stay away from the hybrid personally, but that's just me. But you can see, I mean, they've been selling, so the Tacoma's been their #1 seller. They're selling like hundreds of thousands of units, and look at this. I mean, they just have massive amount of Tacomas here. Another TRD off-road here. That one's actually got a little bit taller tires on it. Looks pretty nice. $56,000, this is a hybrid. And then here's the TRD Sport. So the TRD Sport's coming in at $51,000 suggested retail. And then SR5, this is a little more kind of your common man trim right here, coming in at $45,000. Again, for me, a little much for a little truck, $45,000, but they're selling like hotcakes. And specifically, if you're worried about these new vehicles, the turbo platforms, and you're not gonna keep them that long and you really don't trust them, if you don't trust something like this, that's why they have all these leases going right now. The own nothing and be happy thing is a reality. And I think the last lease deal I saw on these, I think it's $299 a month with like $3,000 down, and I think you get a 10,000 mile allowance. So for something like this, that makes a lot of sense for people to step into leases, because they're so fearful of these problems with these new vehicles. They know they're only gonna keep them 2 to 3 years. And for a lot of people, a lease is the way to go. And for the Tundras over there, I would recommend a lease as well. Just till they get through this problem with their V35A. Once they get through the problem, then who knows, maybe we'll be back to the Toyota of old and skyrocketing prices. But the second gen Tundras, their price is going through the roof right now because of the problem with the third gens. So the Land Cruisers here are, they're gonna be, I really like the looks of the Land Cruiser. It's a struggle for me to recommend them because they cost $70,000. I feel like the Land Cruiser is just this vehicle that you buy as kind of a status symbol, like you didn't want the 4Runner like everybody else, so you bought the Land Cruiser. These are hybrids, they're like 70 grand. They're cool, but for me, I would be probably jumping into maybe the Lexus GX if I was gonna jump up to the $70,000 range. That's just me. And the Sequoia, and I used to love the Sequoias. I had one for years. This is where I think Toyota went wrong. I think the design, the look of the new Sequoia is awesome. Where they completely messed up, I don't like a lot of the gaudy seats, the camo stuff. In the back here, the Sequoia, what used to be really nice for families was it was a flat floor. They raised that up so you lose a lot of the space inside. One of the huge features that I used on the Sequoia was the roll down back window. They lost that. You lost a ton of cargo coming from the old version to this version. Now this looks cooler, objectively. This just looks so much better than the old Sequoia, but it's so much less functional for families. And I feel like they're just going for a different market, like some high-end market with this Sequoia, like the Doug DeMuro market or something. For the price that you spend on these, it has the same engine that the Tundras had, so they were having some issues with those. Detonating engines, not as many, because these do have the hybrid standard. They took the thing that I loved, the Sequoia that I loved, and they messed it up a little bit. This is an $88,000 vehicle. So $88,000 vehicle, and for me, I do a lot of things with the Sequoia, like I put either kayaks or paddle boards hanging out the back. You just kind of lose a lot of the functionality that I personally liked, and it's a little bit smaller than the old version. So I'm not a big fan. I think that's where Toyota they're realizing like, hey, we can build stuff that looks really cool, that has a ton of creature comforts, and maybe some of their functionality, things that people really liked in the past, their functionality items they're kind of lacking on, but they're building cars that sell. And so who's right, me or Toyota? Well, I guess Toyota's right because they're selling more vehicles than ever. So it's working out for them. Another vehicle that, right now, we have one of these in our garage. My daughter drives this Camry. She actually bought it herself. These are extremely nice, just perfect commuter cars. There are a couple dislikes I have. They went cheap on some things, but I really like the styling of the design of these. The SE looks really nice. They make them in all-wheel drive now, and they're coming in. This is $36,000. It's ice cap color too. I love ice cap. The tri-coat white. So these have a hybrid, and it is no joke the mileage you get in these things. So my daughter, she goes all over the place. She's put I think 15 or 16,000 miles on it. And she's averaging like 55 miles per gallon over that entire time. So these things legit get as good a mileage as a Prius, especially with gas prices now. This is one of the best value cars on the market. They're not perfect. They do have some flaws, but man, they drive great. They have tons of power, tons of torque. And so far, she loves it. Probably one of their best values. So here's this one, $37,000. Oh, that's the XLE for $37,000. So still getting up there in price, and the XSE, this is gonna be the most expensive. This one's $42,000. One thing I will say, if you'll notice the SEs and XSEs, they all have a little bit wider tires. If you get the LE, I mentioned this in my review, if you get the LE version of this, they're not gonna look as cool. They're gonna have a skinnier tire, taller, but man, they ride super quiet, super nice with a little bit skinnier tire on them. These are a slightly more harsh ride, but they handle a lot better. What do you guys think of the Tacomas? I actually like the design of the Tacomas. I like that 4Runner that's coming down the lot there. I really like the design, the look and feel of the Toyotas. Now, this is the big question mark. Have they solved the problem for 2026? You've seen on my channel one guy that I interviewed, he did have a detonated engine in a 2026, but you know, it's one. You know, if they sell 200,000 and there's one truck that died, it's not that big a deal. I think Toyota's gonna get it figured out. If they don't get it figured out, it'll be like the first time in history that Toyota just hasn't solved something with regard to engineering and manufacturing. So we see a lot fewer failures. When you look at the failure rate here, it's minuscule compared to General Motors, but I still wouldn't buy one or keep one out of warranty. Still wouldn't keep one of these out of warranty. It would drive me nuts. So I'm rooting for Toyota to get this figured out. Really rooting for everybody, even GM. I'm rooting for their new V8s. I hope the new V8s from GM are awesome. And I hope it just helps, maybe it'll help drive prices down a little bit. If everybody's got reliable powertrains again, maybe we'll see better pricing, but it's probably wishful thinking. That's gonna do it for this one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments as always. Thanks for watching. Until next time.